For more than 150 years, if you think about Wall Street's power and profit, one name probably pops into your head: Goldman Sachs. But for just as long, it's been a total magnet for controversy and public anger. It's this financial titan that literally shapes global markets, but it's also an institution that a lot of people look at with deep suspicion. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into the story behind all that power and all that hate. And our story starts with something that happened pretty recently. In early 2025, Goldman Sachs made a decision that, it didn't make a lot of noise, but it sent a really clear signal through the corporate world. They were backing out of a really big public promise. So back in 2020, Goldman made this huge splash, right? They made a pledge that they would not take a company public unless its board had at least 2 diverse members, with a special focus on women. I mean, this was a big deal, a really bold statement on how companies should be run. But then, in early 2025, that whole initiative was officially scrapped. Okay, so you have to ask yourself, was this just, some small change in policy, or is it a sign of something much, much bigger going on inside one of the most powerful banks in the world? To even begin to answer that, you first got to get your head around the sheer scale of this money machine we're talking about. Yeah, it's almost impossible to really talk about Goldman Sachs without first trying to grasp how massive their operation is. I mean, the numbers here are just mind-boggling. Let's just start with revenue. In 2024 alone, Goldman Sachs pulled in over $53 billion. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that is more than the entire yearly economic output of some countries. We're talking places like Bolivia or Paraguay. Okay, next up, let's look at the money they actually manage. Their assets under management, or AUM, is over $3.14 trillion. And yeah, that's trillion with a T. It's just a staggering amount of capital from pension funds, big corporations, and wealthy people that Goldman is investing all over the globe. And all that scale, well, it translates directly into rock-solid, consistent profit. Quarter after quarter, the firm shows this incredible ability to make money for its shareholders. So the main thing to remember here is simple. We're not just talking about a bank. This is a global economic force. Look, this kind of power doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It started in a basement office back in 1869. From there, Goldman's story is all about constant change and adaptation. They went from financing things like railroads to taking huge, iconic companies like Ford public. They transformed from a quiet private partnership into a public giant, and then completely changed their business model just to survive the 2008 crisis. It's this long history of ambition that's so key. But as you can imagine, with all of that power came a pretty dark reputation. And this, right here, is where the story gets really complicated. Because for all of its incredible success, there's this shadow that follows Goldman Sachs everywhere. A reputation that was cemented by one of the most brutal descriptions in the history of financial journalism. This line was written by Matt Taibbi for Rolling Stone right after the 2008 crash. And it just perfectly captured how angry the public was. It created this unforgettable picture of a relentless, profit-hungry machine that didn't care about anything else. And honestly, that image has stuck with them ever since. You don't get a reputation that harsh by accident. It comes from somewhere. It's rooted in a pattern of scandals that have cost the firm billions in fines and have created this deep-seated public distrust. Okay, the big one, the event that really defined this reputation, was the 2008 financial crisis. Think about this. Publicly, Goldman was getting a $10 billion taxpayer bailout just to stay in business. But privately, behind the scenes, they had made an estimated $4 billion by betting against the housing market. They were literally selling these complicated mortgage products to their clients, while at the very same time, placing huge bets that those very same products would blow up. And here's the thing, 2008 wasn't some one-off event. That vampire squid reputation has been fed by a constant stream of legal and ethical messes all over the world. I mean, this pattern of controversy is truly global. We're talking about a massive bribery scandal in Malaysia that cost them almost $3 billion, misleading investors right here at home, even a huge gender discrimination lawsuit. You can see the fines add up to billions and billions of dollars, but you could argue the real long-term cost has been to their reputation. And then you've got this whole phenomenon people call government sacks. The connection, this revolving door between Goldman's offices and the highest levels of government, it's just impossible to ignore. We've had multiple U.S. Treasury secretaries, prime ministers, heads of central banks, who all got their start at Goldman. And it's this revolving door that really feeds that public perception that the line between Goldman's private profits and the public's best interest is, well, dangerously blurry. So, all of this brings us right up to today. Faced with this legacy of controversy in a financial world that's always changing, Goldman has been making a real effort to change its story and its business. The big new strategy? A pivot away from Wall Street and toward Main Street. First up, they launched Marcus, their online bank for regular people looking for savings accounts and loans. And then came the huge, blockbuster partnership with Apple to launch the Apple Card. It was a serious attempt to go from Wall Street penthouses to the wallets of millions of people. But it turns out that serving millions of everyday customers is a totally different ballgame from advising a few giant corporations. The whole transition has been pretty rocky, and their consumer division has been losing money and really struggling to find its place. The problems have gotten so big, in fact, that the CEO himself has had to publicly admit that their huge partnership with Apple might actually end early. That is a huge admission, and it just goes to show that even for a behemoth like Goldman, reinventing yourself is incredibly, incredibly hard. And so we kind of end up right back where we started. You look at everything from them walking back that diversity pledge to their rocky attempt to get into consumer banking, and what you see is a company that's just a bundle of contradictions. It's an engine of capitalism, an incubator for world leaders, and an eternal magnet for controversy. And after all this time, the biggest question is still out there. Can an institution that was built from the ground up on high-stakes deals and massive risk ever really, truly change its nature?